The reason that renewable energy technology will take hold, I believe that it is inevitable that it will happen. I don't know if it will happen fast enough to prevent climate change. That's the issue. That's why we need to continue pushing for it. But I do believe that it is inevitable that we will move to clean technologies because it is a cheaper, cleaner, safer product. When renewable technologies, clean technologies, are a technology that will continue to improve. They are not dependent on, once you install them, the fuel is free. Whereas fossil fuel products, their price is also determined by the price of fuel. And the price of fuel and the fuel that you have to dig up and bring and store and carry. Whereas solar and wind energy is a technology that you just can continue improving. And as you continue improving, the prices plummet and plummet. And as I showed earlier, solar plants, solar PV plants and wind farms, electricity from those are now cheaper than natural gas. They're either equal to or cheaper, depending on the place, but they're really, in some places, cheaper, and they're dropping, and in many cases, cheaper. So if you think of our hydroelectric dams, that's a very good way to think of renewable energy, because our renewable energy is like our hydroelectric dams in that sense. Our hydroelectric dams were very expensive to build. Many of them were built in the 1930s, and but they brought in they brought a lot to the communities. In Tennessee, my co-author says he remembers shoveling coal into his boiler and that the air would be black, like in China, but in our cities here. And then the dams were built, and he remembers the air cleaning, and he didn't have to shovel coal into his, he wasn't shoveling coal into his boiler anymore, and life was good. And the other thing is it brought a lot of economic benefit and growth and industry because electricity from dams are so cheap. So the thing about renewable energy, and luckily renewable energy doesn't use as much water and doesn't have to deal with fish and that kind of thing as well, and manage and disrupt rivers. But it's the same kind of thing. You know, once the dam was built, the fuel was free, and electricity was cheap, and it was very beneficial for society on so many levels. So solar and wind energy is going to be the same way. Once we install it, it's going to be cheaper and better. So, and the other thing is the technology would continue to get better, continue to get cheaper. Electric vehicles are also will be less expensive than the internal combustion engine. You can fuel them for about $1 per gallon equivalent, and as the technology improves, which it's basically there now, once it's the same price as our fossil fuel powered cars, it will be cheaper to run them. Plus they need less maintenance because you don't have the gas powered engine that has many moving parts and pistons and different things that fail. You just have the battery and the electric motor, and it'll need less service as well. And then, of course, you have the drain on society, but will be relieved from spills and the cost of health, which is estimated about $1,800 per person, and then climate costs, which is about $8,000 per person in the year 2050 that we'll have to be paying. So in the end, it's a better product, and better products end up winning. And I think they will eventually, we'll see more of it, and it'll take hold. If you look at electric vehicles as an example of a better product, it is estimated by the year 2022-ish that the internal combustion engine car will be about the same price as the electric vehicle car. And that's when there's expected to be takeoff. And we're already seeing it. There may be a number of Tesla Model 3s running around. I don't know how, I know on the West Coast, they're everywhere. But I'm not sure how many you guys have here and how many you guys are seeing, but I'm seeing them everywhere. Electric vehicles are popping up more and more. As we have more models, there will be more variety for us. Right now, there aren't a lot of models, so they don't provide everything that all of us need or would want. But as more come on, they'll take hold. because they're cheaper once they're the same price, because they're cheaper to run, because they're fun, they'll start taking hold. And I think you'll see the disruption happen, that we will see fewer people just will stop wanting to buy the internal combustion engines. In China, this last year, 1 million were sold. And in the US, we have 1 million on the road today. Nissan, various German manufacturers, GM and Ford have all, CEOs and executives have all talked about an electric future. So it is coming. And it'll be like so many other technologies. In the blink of an eye, all of a sudden, there'll be tons of them. Here's an example of exponential growth of electric vehicles. I'm using electric vehicles as an example of the exponential growth that we're seeing in these clean technologies. And what you can see is it took 6 years for the first 1 million electric vehicles to get on the road. So that's between 2011 and 2016, or is that 5 years? 60 months. Sorry, 5 years. It took about 5 years. And then for the next 1 million vehicles to come on the road, it took about 17 months. Then for the next 1 million, it took 10 months. This is worldwide. Then between 2017 and 2018, it took 6 months to get 1 million on the road. And again, 2018, 2019, it took about 6 months. So that's where you see exponential growth. And it's been hard for us in general as humans to predict exponential growth. I think we're linear. In general, we're linear thinking creatures, so we're linear thinkers. But what happens is as these technologies take hold, they just take over. And in a blink of an eye, we're surprised by it. And we've seen disruptive forces already. And a few examples are, well, Uber is pushing on taxis. They're really convenient and easy. It's easy to use Uber everywhere. New York is a place where you have pretty great taxi service. You have a lot of taxis. But in other places, you don't necessarily have that taxi service. In San Diego, I met my co-author, actually in San Diego, and we went to a movie after we worked on our book, and it was late at night, and we had called a cab, and the taxi didn't come, just didn't come. And we're just sitting there, you know, and it got empty on the street. The people in the building left, you know. We were just sitting there. And finally, I think finally the taxi came. And I've had experiences where I went to Rice University to give a talk. And on the way back, I had called a taxi there. And the taxi didn't come in my flight. I had to get to my flight. And that was the first time I used, I don't know if I used Lyft or Uber, one of them. And it was the first time I downloaded the application. I pressed the button. I called them. I could see the car, where it was, you know, where the Lyft or Uber driver was. It was over, you know, there. And you could see it driving to you. You could say how much time it would take to get to you. I'm like, all right, it'll get to me in 4 minutes. That'll get me to my flight on time. It's all good. And I used it. And then the next time I used them, I used Lyft in Los Angeles. And I went up to the taxi driver in LA. And, you know, I said, okay, and I'm thinking, I want to use the taxi. I want to use these guys, you know. I don't have to go to Uber. And I go to him and I say, I want to go to this hotel. And it was just very close. And it was a very short ride where I was going. And I could hear him thinking. And he goes, well, I'm going to have to take you on this really long route to get you to the marina because, you know, of traffic. And I thought, oh no, that's wrong. And then I went inside, I called the Lyft, or I called one of these guys, you know. And then the other time, and I didn't use it at my house. At my house, I called a taxi and the taxi didn't come, okay, at all. And then I ended up I just drove my car to the airport and then my husband got to the airport and took the car home or something. So taxi service isn't, but these guys are coming in and they're taking over because they're providing a service where it's not always functioning as well. So we've seen it in other places. I went on about taxis, but we've seen it with our digital cameras. I got a film-based camera for my graduation gift for graduate school, and within 2 years, I couldn't find a place to develop my film. You know, I didn't see that one coming. And Kodak didn't see it coming either, because they actually had the technology for digital cameras. And they decided, nah, it's never going to happen. They didn't see the exponential growth of it. They thought, no, you know, it's film, it's all film, and, you know, they suffered for it. Our smartphones have replaced all other phones. I mean, our analog phones, rotary phones, you know, are a thing of the past. There are no more blockbusters. We download our films. Solar City wants to take the utility over, or wants to do some of the utilities work and produce some electricity. So we aren't always good at predicting exponential growth. And clean technologies are showing exponential growth potential right now. And there's a good chance that they will happen faster than we can imagine. If we are lucky, if we're really lucky, they will happen really fast, like happened with Blockbuster and Netflix, and like happened with digital cameras. And maybe, you know, we'll be able to solve this climate change problem faster than we could imagine, if we're really lucky. Meanwhile, we have to continue to work on it. Our entrepreneurs need to work, our activists need to work, our educators, our lawmakers, everybody has to keep working on it, to keep it going, because we have to keep buying these products, because as we buy them, as we invest in them, more money will come to them, more investment will come to them, and they'll continue to grow faster, because we need to have it happen fast. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about is the consumer. We as consumers are essential. We're really important for this as well, because we buy many of these products. We buy products, and we can help this transformation happen. One of the best ways to do it is in our home, and to think of the all-electric home. As I talked about, we use a lot of natural gas in our homes, and primarily from heating and cooking. And if we just move from natural gas to electric heating and electric cooking, we can have a very big impact. The electric utilities are moving to renewable energy, and some, as Excel, have even committed to 100% clean energy by 2050. So I believe that it's happening there. Natural gas is kind of a problem there, or is as well, but it is happening there. But our homes, we produce a lot of greenhouse gases from the heating of our homes and our buildings. So as we think, and I've talked about the electric home before, if we move to heat pumps, there's also district heating, which some cities have done, where they've used waste heat from other processes and used pipes and brought those into homes as well. And there are some cities and countries around the world that do use that. So that can be used as well. Probably in individual homes, a good way, as we have a natural gas heater, when our furnace dies, then you just switch it with the heat pump. And the other thing to think about is not to be overly stressed as a consumer and say, I've got to do all of this at once, because it will be hard to finance it. I mean, finding the financing, figuring it out is not always the easiest. You don't even have contractors that know how to do everything. You have to find the right contractor and look at it, and not to stress ourselves to do everything. I'm doing it slowly. Our natural gas oven died, and my husband had been wanting an induction oven, and I was kind of skeptical for a long time. For like 20 years, I was like, I don't really want an induction. And he's a techie, he's a computer software engineer. And he was like, yeah, I want this induction oven, it's gonna be so cool. And I was always, 20 years ago, I was like, no, I don't know, I'm not sure. And as I started to research this and learn more about it, then I was like, okay, you want that, how about we get that induction oven you wanted, or induction cooker? Because he had been wanting it for so long, and now that I really, really wanted a new oven, because it wasn't working well, and he was kind of bringing contractors, and we were fixing it, and repair guys, and I was getting sick of being there waiting for the repair guy to fix this burner and fix that burner. And that's where I was like, hey, let's do that, you know, and he was like, yeah, let's do it, and then I got a new one. Anyway, the point is, as something breaks, change it with something cleaner, you know, and more efficient is the idea. So the other question is as a consumer moving to an all-electric home, getting heat pumps, which is really important because of the natural gas and induction ovens, is a little bit harder sell than an electric vehicle. I mean, I'm really telling you, if you get an electric vehicle, especially if you love cars, you know, they're so awesome. I mean, they drive really, I grew up in Chicago area, so I love, I was never a real hot rodder, but you know, if I get on the highway, I definitely don't want to be blocked, and I want to drive and, you know, have some fun. So I really love the electric car and being able to be able to zoom through traffic, and it's really great. And if you love cars, you're going to love the electric car. Heat pump's a little harder to be like, oh yeah, look at my heat pump. This is so awesome. You know, I mean, solar panels, people put solar panels up and they can brag about it. You know, they talk to their buddy, and then it's kind of cool. You get a solar panel, and then your neighbor sees it, and then they're like, oh, where'd you get that? And your contractor, how'd you do it? And then it kind of, you know, it can, those can take off. It's harder to do the heat pump. Now, I guess what could be sexy is the all-electric home. Elon Musk, I bring him up because he's pushing, he's been working on the concept of doing like solar tiles for the roof. Yeah, and he's doing, you know, electric vehicles and then energy storage. So he's helping create your own little electric microgrid. And I think that if you think of the all-electric home, it's an easier sell than the heat pump. Woohoo! You know, they're kind of not as, they're really great, but it's not like an electric vehicle. So what I want to say as kind of the final things I want to talk about is how much impact we can have as a consumer. And I want to bring a few examples of where we've made a difference. One was in California. Everybody put solar panels on their roof, and it had a huge, huge impact because it made the utilities and the lawmakers listen in California. I'm going to bring up something really boring, which is this duck curve. This duck curve is the curve that shows the load of electricity that the utilities experience once everybody puts solar panels on the roof. And this gave them a lot of sleepless nights, and every conference I go to, you know, some utility guy or commissioner or whoever, the regulators of the utilities, they throw this curve up. Look at this duck curve. This is what we've got to deal with. But what's happened is now the regulators and lawmakers have had to think about how to deal with the solar panels on the roof. The consumer said, we want solar panels. We want renewable electricity. You know, they didn't even have to go to their lawmaker, well, except for they got net metering, which helped them put it on their roof, where they were able to sell their electricity back. So that's not totally true. But they as a consumer, they made a statement and they put it on. So what happened is, and I'll just walk you through it because it's kind of fun to think about. What happened is the sun came out, and this is how much demand for electricity there was. And all of a sudden, everybody went to work, and the demand for electricity went down for two reasons. One, from the central generators, from the gas plants and the electricity plants and the nuclear plants that they had. There wasn't a lot of demand because everybody had solar panels on the roof. So the sun came out, and all of a sudden the demand went down, like way down. And then they had to start turning all of their generation off. And they're like, oh no, and then they weren't making money, right? Oh shoot, we have to, how do you just turn a nuclear plant off? Or how do you, and electricity is used the minute it's generated, you don't store it. And with the central generation, it was very predictable how the electricity would go to the home. They would know at this time there was the electricity, and they turned the plants on and off. All of a sudden they were having to turn all their plants off. And that's bad because plants don't go on and off that easily. It takes time to ramp them back up, and I think it takes money too. Anyway, all of a sudden the sun would go down, people would come home, and then bam, the demand would go way up. Now the solar panels weren't producing electricity. Everybody came home and turned their lights on because the sun went down, and all of a sudden they were scrambling to turn all of their generators back on. And they went, oh my God, how are we going to do this? Our generators don't go on that fast. This is crazy. Okay, so they started passing laws for energy storage units, because storage actually reacts quicker than natural gas generating plants or coal plants or nuclear plants. They're using natural gas plants for this quick response, but it does not respond as quickly as energy storage. Energy storage is really good, especially battery storage, but there's other types of storage technology too for handling the renewable energy and the variable energy. Okay. The other place that this happened was with electric vehicles. In 2016, 400,000 people put $1,000 on Tesla Model 3. They put $1,000 down on 400,000 Tesla Model 3s. And so there were 400,000 Tesla Model 3 pre-orders. And before that, like there still are, but there were many articles about how Tesla was going to fail, how it's going nowhere. German auto companies were laughing at Tesla. Nobody was taking electrification of the auto industry that seriously. I mean, nobody in the auto industry. All of a sudden, 400,000 people put $1,000 down, sight unseen for 400,000 cars. And the auto industry went, oh my gosh, there's a market for this. Wow, people really want this product. And within a year, then there were all of these, designs for cars coming out from GM and Ford, and then the Bolt from GM was in the works, and they were pushing that, and the European companies started to push harder, and now everybody's thinking about electric future. But I remember when that happened, and I remember, reading, and nobody really thought it was going to happen. I remember talking to folks, oh, I don't know, and that it literally, what the consumers took action, and they told the auto industry, we want electric cars. And now we're seeing more and more electric cars come out. So it's very powerful. So the future is in our drive to innovate. We need a can-do attitude. Things in our society, in our world, have happened from a can-do attitude. George Washington had a can-do attitude, and we have a nation, right? Susan B. Anthony worked for the suffrage movement, and Martin Luther King worked for civil rights. Gandhi worked to free his nation and form independent India. And then you also have your inventors like Thomas Edison and Tesla and Steve Jobs or Elon Musk. You have entrepreneurs, you have activists, you have teachers, you have engineers, you have folks who organize our conferences. You have everybody working together with a can-do attitude to make it happen. And it feels like we're working hard and it's not happening sometimes, or it's so slow. But with this collective action, we can have a can-do attitude, and we can make things happen. People have made things happen. They have. And the climate crisis is a huge challenge. There are a lot of factors pulling us back. There's a lot of inertia, and there's forces trying to stop it. But we can continue to push forward. We have done it in the past. We are resilient. We fought fascism in World War II. We've gone to the moon, and we can do this also. And we can do it together. It's not going to just be one person, I believe. I believe it's a collective effort on our part, and it takes everybody. You can see the consumer, we can do something. We can all do something. And so I just encourage all of us to not lose hope every time we see negative press, but to think we can do it, because it's that attitude that's going to get us, push us into the 21st century and push us to have a cleaner, safer, and better 21st century.